1 and 1/2 plus 2 and 1/3. I'm adding mixed numbers here. The problem is written horizontally, but I like to operate with mixed numbers written vertically. So I'm going to write this vertically up and down, 1 and 1/2 plus 2 and 1/3. Now I know that when adding or subtracting fractions, the denominators of those fractions need to be the same. Okay, so here in the mixed numbers, my denominators are 2 and 3, so they are not the same. I need to find the least common denominator, or the least common multiple of those denominators, 2 and 3. Well, the LCM of 2 and 3 would be 6, right? I could use the ladder method to figure that out. And so I need to make these denominators be 6. And so how can I get 2 to be 6? 2 times what would be 6? Well, that would be 3, right? And so to create an equivalent fraction, I need to multiply the top and the bottom by that same number, by 3 over 3. Okay? Now remember, this is 1 and 1/2, so I know my whole number is going to remain 1, and my fraction part will be multiplied by 3 over 3. So 1 times 3 is 3, and 2 times 3 is 6. So what I'm saying here is that 1/2 is the same thing as 3/6, right? 1 and 1/2 is the same thing as 1 and 3/6. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing with this denominator. How do I get from 3 to 6? 3 times what would be 6? Well, that would be 2, right? So I'm going to multiply by 2 over 2 so that I have an equivalent fraction. Again, my whole number 2 will stay the same, and I multiply these fractions. 1 times 2 is 2, and 3 times 2 is 6. So I created an equivalent fraction. 1/3 is the same thing as 2/6. Now, pay attention to your operation symbol. You are adding here, so I'm going to put a plus sign and add. When adding mixed numbers, you add the fraction part first. So 3/6 plus 2/6, that would be 5/6, and then you add the whole numbers. 1 plus 2 would be 3. So 3 and 5/6 is the sum. Next, I have 5 minus 3 and 3/4. Again, this is written horizontally, but I'm going to write it vertically. 5 minus 3 and 3/4. Okay, now as you can see here, if I subtract the fraction parts, I don't have a fraction part here. If I have 5, I could say this is 5 and 0/4, right? If I have 5 and 0/4, that's just 5, right? And so what I need to do here, if this is 0/4, I can't do 0 minus 3, can I? I need to borrow. And if I borrow, I'm basically unsimplifying this. And so I would need to add a whole fraction to this 0/4. So what I would do here is I would cross out the 5 and make it a 4 and add a whole fraction. If my denominator is 4, a whole fraction would be 4/4, right? 4/4, because 4/4 is 1, right? And so if I have 4 and 4/4, that's simply 5, right? Which is my number. But I'm unsimplifying it so that I have a common denominator so that I can subtract my fraction parts. Now if I subtract my fraction parts, I have 4/4 minus 3/4, that's 1/4. And then I subtract my whole numbers. 4 minus 3 is 1. So I get my difference here is 1 and 1/4. If I were to operate backwards, 1 and 1/4 plus 3 and 3/4 should give me 5.